It is Tuesday, August 3rd here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to night one of the Draft Sharks Invitational. I'm your host, Matt Schauf. With me tonight are Jared Smola and Adam Krautwurst, and we are kicking off the second ever DS Invitational. As I said, this tournament was the brainchild of our friend Adam K. Adam, please tell the people what we're trying to accomplish with this.
Well, I have 3 children. I don't know how many brain children I have. This might be my only one, but hopefully they have their mother's brain, actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, the whole idea behind this competition was to get the best high stakes players we can find and the best analysts we can find, put them in a tournament together, a single entry tournament, and see who comes out on top. So super excited to see all these guys drafting. The cool thing about this is it's a very unique format, right? So it's super flex, it's best ball, it's tight end premium, and it's 25 rounds, I think. And you also have to start three receivers. So it's a unique format that there's nothing else out there like it, to kind of even the playing field with everybody. And yeah, this is going to be fun. They're going to each and every night we're going to do this, and there's going to be different builds and different strategies that we're going to see. So it's never going to get boring. And so I'm excited.
Yeah, just like Adam said, we're going 8 Mile style here. You only get one shot. We debuted it last year, 5 leagues, 60 teams overall. So each one's a 12-team league. Added a sixth league this year, so it's up to 72 teams. Even tougher to win the top prize. Here are the specs. Adam went over most of them. 25-round draft, best ball scoring, tight end premium. That means 1.5 points per reception, 4 tight ends, straight PPR for everybody else. You start 2 running backs, you start 3 wide receivers, the 1 tight end, 2 flex spots, and of course, one of those can be a quarterback because it is a super flex league. That adds plenty of strategy to it. Jared, when there's a super flex spot, I mean, it basically just ends up being a 2 QB approach, right?
Yeah, for sure. But again, with the tight end premium scoring and the 3 wide receivers, I think the goal here was to really try to, balance out all the positions. You get in a normal PPR draft, they're kind of all going to go the same way, where you're going to get a whole bunch of running backs and wide receivers early, and the quarterbacks start going in round 4 or whatever. With this format, there are so many different ways to build your team. And I was looking back at last year's results. So our overall champion, Pete Overzet, he took a running back in round 1. He didn't take his second running back until round 12. But then there was another team that won their league. It was Jay Reed and Scott Koerner. They're chasing the helmet on Twitter. They didn't take their first wide receiver until round 13. So that just kind of goes to show that the different builds that can, both have success in this format.
Yeah, with all the variations in the lineup here, there's really no one way to go about it. And if most of the league is going in one direction, you might find yourself changing your strategy mid-draft versus what you thought going in. Plus, there's no real way to practice this because this is not a format that matches anything that you're playing anywhere else. So you can't go do a bunch of FFPC drafts. You can't go do a bunch of Best Ball Mania drafts and get ready for it. Everybody else here is experienced. They know how to do this. That's what makes it a unique draft and makes it a good challenge. Unlike most expert draft setups, of course, this is not just for bragging rights or just for fun. Our boss, Lenny Papano, put up his own money for this. We've got a $250 prize to each of the 6 league winners, $2,000 top prize to the overall winner. As Jared said, that was Peter Overzet last year. Tonight, we're going to start to see who might be the candidates for the 2021 cash. Let's get to know this draft order before we get to some of the picks, which have started moving off the board. Picking first is Pat Thorman. He's a contributor at Establish the Run. He is a former analyst for Pro Football Focus, probably the oldest profile pick of any football guy on Twitter, and that is where he is at Pat_Thorman. Almost said the wrong last name for him. Bob Harris is picking second. He is an FSWA Hall of Famer who has been doing this fantasy stuff for a long time, a senior editor at Football Diehards. He is a host on Sirius XM Fantasy Radio. He is at Football Diehard on Twitter. Nelson Sousa is picking third. He is a longtime high-stakes player, finished second overall way back in the 2009 World Championship of Fantasy Football, of course. We're all familiar with that around here. Lenny Papano, our boss, the co-founder of that one. Nelson has also split 4 different contest championships in the NFFC and was the 2016 main event co-champion of the FFPC. You can now find him on Twitter at the_franchise12 and also contributing football content for FTN. Noah Ruddell is an experienced high-stakes player as well, and best ball. He was a finalist in both of Underdog's big tournaments last year, a finalist in the Millie Maker on Draft a couple years ago, and he reached the finals in Draft's Mega for both NFL and MLB, placing second in the baseball tournament. So not just a football guy here. He is at Noah Ruddell, Ruddell, on Twitter. Adam, I know you're familiar with those past two high-stakes players that I just mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's exciting to see them in here. I love the high stakes guys. Nelson's always got his fade list that he puts out every year. Find that super interesting. I'm always checking that out, and excited to have them both in the same draft.
Yeah, it's fun to get to know some of these high stakes guys. You know, we see the picks, but we've got some in the Draft Sharks Discord. You follow them on Twitter. You kind of get to know their voices and their tendencies, the things they share or don't share every year. It's a fun group to get involved with. Picking fifth on our board is Mike Randle. He's an analyst and podcast host for the Action Network, where he covers both fantasy football and college hoops. You can also find him on the RotoViz Mailbag Pod. You can mailbag, that is, if you don't live out in the swamp. He's on Roto Underworld. He is on Last Word on Pro Football. He is at Randle Rant on Twitter. Ian Allan is picking right behind Mike Randle. He's the founder, publisher of Fantasy Index. Ian is a Hall of Famer in both the Fantasy Sports Writers Association and the Fantasy Sports and Gaming situation. Man, I'm going to have to check my dictionary and thesaurus if I'm going to do this stream for the whole hour and a half that we're going to be on here. Anyway, the FSGA used to be the FSTA. Ian Allan is a Hall of Famer in two different places, so he's been around fantasy for a while. He's been doing this since the rest of us thought spreadsheets was the way to make a bed. Jack Miller, quick riser in the fantasy industry over the past couple of years. He contributes to Establish the Run and NBC Sports Edge, previously wrote for RotoViz and 4for4. Jack Miller is the only one in tonight's group that was a league champ in the DS Invitational last year, finished number 7 overall in 2020. He is at Jack Miller 02 on Twitter. Jared, did you see what Jack did to win his league last year by any chance?
I did not, but I can look that up while you continue talking.
That'd be something to check out. I think he got an early running back and then waited after that, if I remember correctly, but we'll see some of those results. Sigmund Bloom is up next. If you're watching this right now or listening to it afterward, you probably know who Sigmund Bloom is, even if you think that his name starts with a Z like I apparently do. Mm-hmm. Officially, he's a co-owner at footballguys.com. He's been podcasting since before most of us knew what that even meant, and despite being in the game so long, he still has some of the freshest takes on things. He just looks at things in a different way on the fantasy football front. I could listen to Sigmund Bloom break down anything in fantasy, no matter what I thought about it going in, and holds my interest. He's at Sigmund Bloom on Twitter. Next up, Sean Koerner is the director of predictive analytics for the Action Network and a mainstay around the top of the annual Fantasy Pros Expert Accuracy Rankings. Topped that field in 2015, 16, and 17. You can find him on the Action Network podcast with Chris Raybon. He's on Twitter at _oddsmaker. We've got 3 more to go. Number 10 on the draft list, Eliot Christ is the chief operating officer for the FTN network. He is a COO and CTO for Bets Media, formerly on a number of other sites. You can find his fantasy and betting content on FTN. He is at Eliot Christ on Twitter. Anthony Crescenzo is an experienced player with the NFFC, the 2019 NFFC primetime champion. He is among the top 20 all-time in NFFC winnings, so clearly knows what he's doing on the football draft board. And then finally, at the turn, it's Andrew Geller. He is at _guilds on Twitter and in the Draft Sharks Discord, an active member in there. Been playing the FFPC since 2014, multiple league titles in both the main event and the Football Guys Players Championship there. That's going to help his familiarity with the tight end premium format. 5th overall in the 2019 NFFC Online Championship and 9th overall in last year's Football Guys Players Championship. Adam, I know he's been a guest on the Deep End Pod with you and Mike Shope.
Yeah, Guilds is he's definitely the high stakes player we're looking for. He does high volume, high stakes. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how we started last year, but just looking at this draft board, it's wild compared to like the normal Superflex leagues. I was kind of surprised to see him go receiver there, but hopefully it works out for him. But yeah, he's been a great contributor in our Draft Sharks Discord. Super experienced. Lots of information, lots of opinions, which is what you're looking for.
Let's get to some of these early picks because I think that's what most people came here for if they're watching the stream right now. We've got Pat starting things off with Christian McCaffrey, as you do in pretty much any draft. Dalvin Cook off the board, number 2 to Bob Harris. Patrick Mahomes, the first quarterback, goes 3rd to Nelson Sousa. Then the 4th pick on the board is Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce. We didn't see our second quarterback go until the 9th pick of round 1. Jared, does that surprise you?
It does, because to me in these 2 quarterback super flex leagues, it's kind of a race to get one of those top 4 or 5. I mean, to me, it was 5 quarterbacks before all the Dak Prescott stuff. That shoulder thing has me a bit worried. So I wouldn't blame anyone for sort of knocking him out of that tier. But yeah, I mean, to me, after McCaffrey, Cook, and I think Kelce, in tight end premium, beyond those 3, I'm looking to get one of those elite quarterbacks. I am surprised that guys like Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, even Darren Waller, went ahead of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm on Fantasy Mojo right now. FantasyMojo.com. They do all the ADP stuff for FFPC, and I'm in their. It's not the same, but I'm in their Superflex Best Ball ADP, and normally 7 quarterbacks go in the first round of those. So I don't know, and that's tight end premium as well. So I would say that maybe it's the starting 3 wide receivers that pushes these quarterbacks down, but there was only 2 receivers taken, in the first round. So I find this super interesting that only 3 quarterbacks went in the first.
It was Noah Ruddell taking Alvin Kamara 4th overall after Patrick Mahomes was the first quarterback off the board. He then took another running back in round 2, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Mike Randle took Devontae Adams, then also went receiver in round 2. So it's an interesting start to this format that we talked about already. Ian Allan in that 6th spot took Travis Kelce. I don't think that's a surprising pick. Jared, you mentioned him among the top options in a tight end premium. So to see him 6th off the board, even with just 1 quarterback gone, not really shocking given the format.
Yeah, to me, even in 2 quarterback, if you're talking tight end premium, Travis Kelce is a top 4 player to me, alongside McCaffrey, Cook, and Patrick Mahomes. So good value there for Ian Allan. Aaron Jones to Jack Miller, definitely the most surprising pick of round 1, taking Jones at RB4. I did look at Jack Miller's team from last year. He had a similar build to Overzet where he took 1 running back in the first round, Alvin Kamara, and did not take his 2nd running back until round 11, didn't take his 3rd running back until round 14. So, we'll see if he's going to follow a similar strategy tonight and, hope it works again for him.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't really mind any build in these formats.
Right.
I think as long as you don't wait too long on quarterback, I think you'll be okay. But yeah, I think that one running back start has obviously proven to be very strong if that one running back can stay healthy, right? So I think Aaron Jones as the 4th overall running back's a little steep for me. I like Eliot, who went mid-second over Jones for sure, and Eckler. So yeah, I think, but that's all preference. We'll see how that plays out. But I really like Eliot Christ start. See, I don't play a ton of super flex, right? So I play mostly FFPC main events, FFPC football guys, and so whenever I get in a super flex, if I have the chance to take quarterbacks early, I will, because it's fun. And so I think Eliot Christ with the 2 quarterback start is pretty interesting, and we'll see how we can build out from there.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see from there if he then bothers adding another quarterback of significance. I mean, he's already got 2 who are probably going to be starting every week. So I would assume that he'll be off of quarterback for quite a while, maybe throw in a 3rd late just to cover injuries. But I would assume that that's the strategy from that starting point. Jack Miller, as you mentioned, I mean, Aaron Jones, not only interesting given the importance of quarterbacks for the Superflex format, but interesting that Aaron Jones is the 4th running back off of this board. Jack Miller in the YouTube comments said that he got sniped on Kelce, was hoping that he would get there. That was probably a dream when you're picking 7th. And so with that gone, figured he would be able to get a quarterback around the turn, and then decided to plant his flag, in his words, on Aaron Jones. So clearly he's big on Aaron Jones this year. We're big on Aaron Jones, whether you have him 4th, 6th, whatever the specific spot. The upside has certainly been shown the past couple of years. Darren Waller followed Aaron Jones off the board at number 8 to Sigmund Bloom. And then it was Sean Koerner taking Josh Allen. So he's Adam Krautworth's new favorite person now. Kyler Murray started that Eliot Christ team, as you mentioned, in the 10 spot. Then it was Derrick Henry and Tyreek Hill closing out round one. So we had 3 quarterbacks go in the round, and we also have had a second drafter start with 2 running backs. I guess he was the one who did it first. Anthony Crescenzo at that 11 spot, followed Derrick Henry at 111 with Saquon Barkley at the 202. Jared, what do you think about starting with 2 running backs in this format?
Again, I think it's fine. We'll see where Anthony goes from here. I think when you start with 2 running backs, you kind of want to ignore the position, for the next handful of rounds, because you're assuming those 2 running backs are going to hit. You're assuming they're going to be at least top 10 guys, and you're going to be using them in your starting lineup. This is a best ball league, so you're assuming you're going to be using them in their starting lineup for 80, 90% of the week. So we'll see where he builds from here. Man, to me, Eliot Christ, that's just a dream start, getting 2 of those elite quarterbacks. Again, I think, to me, beyond the top few picks, you just want to grab as many of those top 4 or 5 quarterbacks as possible, because I think, I love Tom Brady this year. I like Aaron Rodgers, but to me, there's such a drop-off in both weekly and season-long ceiling between the Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, even Dak Prescott's, and the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady types.
Yeah, it's that rushing upside for sure. Like you said, that weekly upside. I mean, Brady has weekly upside with the passing, but man, the Lamar Jackson, 150-yard rushing upside is huge. And when you can pair him up with Kyler Murray, I mean, those are monster weeks. And we'll see what he does. I mean, he probably won't. If I was him, I wouldn't touch quarterback for the rest of the draft. Maybe you grab a third one, like a Sam Darnold or something later on. Just in case for injury, but even if it's hurt, you only have to start 1 quarterback. You know what I mean? So yeah, we'll see how the rest of it pans out.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if I'd go for a third in the Sam Darnold range. I might even wait beyond that and take. I guess you don't want the backup for either of those guys, but taking a third at some point for some insurance. Last year, I remember some of the drafters talking about going running back heavy early, maybe being a differentiator, or maybe it just turned out that way and people weren't expecting it to be a differentiator. But obviously the format leaves room for lots of different kinds of builds. And right after Anthony Crescenzo with the 2 running backs that we just mentioned, it was the Guilds at the turn with Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs as his first 2 picks. Of course, it is full PPR. You do have to start 3 receivers. So, similar to getting the 2 top shelf quarterbacks, he's got 2 top shelf wide receivers that can lay that base. That could be a position that he doesn't bother with for a while after that. It's about to come back to his turn at the end of round 3, and we'll catch up on all the picks, but 11 quarterbacks off the board at that point. So you're still talking about the bottom of QB1 territory, and it is a best ball format. So, I mean, maybe we'll see the Guilds double up on quarterbacks at this turn if he likes that area of the position.
Yeah, we'll see. This is where it gets tough to me because, again, I think there's such a drop-off between those, elite quarterbacks in that next tier. So, to me, guys like Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, they feel a bit overvalued just compared to, guys like Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott who were going, around round and a half earlier. Again, my general strategy in 2 quarterback superflex this year is to, again, try to get as many of those elites as possible. And if I don't get them, I'm trying to wait and grab, the 3rd, 4th tier guys. I think that, 2nd, 3rd tier is a bit overvalued.
Yeah, and it depends on how many you're comfortable taking, right? So if you're comfortable taking 3 quarterbacks, then yeah, waiting for maybe that 3rd tier and grabbing 3 of them. And it depends on where you're drafting, right? So if you're at the end of the draft, at either end, 1, 2, 11, or 12, if you wait and a quarterback run goes, you're screwed, so you really gotta, Eliot was kind of there at the 10 spot, it was like, and those were kind of no-brainer picks, but even Pat Thorman's like, I got to get at least 1 quarterback here, or I might get, I might not get one, so I think it's, where you draft has a lot to do with it too.
I haven't done a whole lot of Superflex drafting so far this year, so it'll help me to be able to watch the first 4 leagues before I draft my DS Invitational League. But I might also get in a practice or 2 on FFPC and a Superflex best ball to kind of get my bearings for this one. We'll catch up with the picks now. We mentioned around the 1-2 turn, we had Stephon Diggs and then Saquon Barkley. It was Lamar Jackson following Kyler Murray off the board for Eliot Christ's team. Then we had George Kittle as the 3rd tight end off the board. He went to Sean Koerner's team. Dak Prescott went to Sigmund Bloom after that. He is the 5th quarterback off the board. Then Russell Wilson, QB6, to Jack Miller. So Jack said that when he made his first-round pick, he felt pretty good about a quarterback getting back around to him. I would bet that Russell Wilson was kind of the end of that group where he was hoping to get one to him, because I do think that I guess you could say Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are similarly placed in what we can expect from them, but I think there's a little bit higher ceiling on Russell Wilson. That's probably not even fair, actually, coming off the season that Aaron Rodgers just had last year.
Yeah, see, I think Jack and Sigmund got pretty fortunate that Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson made it back to them. If I was drafting where they were, I would have been grabbing a quarterback there. I mean, Jack might have been able to get Josh Allen or whoever his quarterback 2 was in the first round and still get Aaron Jones in the second. But regardless, I think Jones and Russell Wilson is a solid start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with only there was only one quarterback gone by the time Jack picked, so maybe he thought he could wait it out. And hey, it ended up working out as long as Wilson was in that tier for him. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and whether it was Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, maybe it was Justin Herbert, maybe that was the group of 7 where he felt pretty good about one getting back to him. Worked out, as far as we know, without knowing his specific preferences at quarterback. Ian Allan followed Jack Miller's pick with Zeke Elliott. He's the 7th running back off the board, right in the middle of round 2, so that gives him a Travis Kelce, Zeke Elliott start. It was Calvin Ridley to Mike Randle's team at the 5th overall pick. So he took Devontae Adams in round 1, brought it back around with Calvin Ridley, who was the 4th wide receiver off the board. He's through 3 picks at this point and still doesn't have a quarterback. The guy right next to him, Noah Ruddell, also doesn't have a quarterback yet. He followed Kamara with Austin Eckler, as we mentioned. Going to be a lot of receptions between those 2 running backs at the very least.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that start at all. I mean, for sure. And I even like, the Gibson Edwards-Helaire situation with Mahomes. He got that stack. And then what's interesting to me is, will Edwards-Helaire get more catches this year? I mean, I feel like the big thing on him coming out of college, the edge that I thought he might have had was that he was a really good pass catcher, and they never really, overutilized him in that role. Jared and I were talking earlier, like, imagine if they would have taken like Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift or something instead of Edwards-Helaire, like how insane, that's probably the 102 pick this year if they had one of those guys as their running back. So hopefully Edwards-Helaire can get better and get a little more luck around the goal line, and that pick could smash. And I like the stack with Mahomes.
After Austin Eckler, so you mentioned him, Nelson Sousa took Mahomes in round 1, Antonio Gibson in round 2, then took Clyde Edwards-Helaire in round 3. Now, Jared, is that stack, the quarterback with the number 1 running back, one that you would shoot for in this range?
Yeah, I mean, to me, he took Edwards-Helaire a few running back spots higher than I have him, at RB10. But I don't think he reached significantly for either of those guys, and there definitely is some correlation because we know Edwards-Helaire is going to do some stuff in the passing game, and taking a couple of Chiefs through their first 3 picks is never a bad idea. So I like the move there by Nelson.
I would say I think there are very few offenses where I would make that kind of attempt. I did so with Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott from the Cowboys in my main event draft a few weeks ago. I think Kansas City is an offense that you can make a case for it. I think in general, what I've seen is that it's not likely that you're going to get a top 5 quarterback and a top 5 running back season from those early picks from the same team in the same season. So it kind of caps your upside when you're looking at large field tournament. But like I said, Kansas City, one of those offenses, I think it has a chance of working. Bob Harris, the 2nd pick in round 1, followed Dalvin Cook with a couple quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. So clearly Bob Harris, one of our older drafters, just looking for guys that are contemporaries for him.
Hey, both those 55-year-old quarterbacks were like top 8 fantasy quarterbacks last year, so not a bad move.
I think if he wins this, I can picture them all smoking pipes and wearing sweaters with leather patches on the elbows at the end. Pat Thorman, the leadoff guy in the draft, followed Christian McCaffrey with DeAndre Hopkins, who was the 5th wide receiver off the board, then Justin Herbert to start round 3. That was the 8th quarterback and preceded the Tom Brady pick. So that's the kind of mixing it up at the beginning that you guys have been talking about. And Justin Herbert wasn't a huge runner last year. a little bit inflated on the touchdown run category, but does have that rushing upside. So how do you like that start, Jared?
And did you see that like 70-yard bomb that Herbert threw in camp the other day? That was pretty. So, I'm super high on the Chargers offense. I think they got an upgraded offense coordinator with Joe Lombardi. So I think Herbert at quarterback 8 is a nice value, and to get him at the 2-3 turn after taking McCaffrey, and that seems to be the general strategy if you're picking one this year that I've seen in a lot of FFPC drafts in particular, is to take McCaffrey, sort of let him be your anchor at running back, and then kind of ignore running back for at least the next few rounds and kind of try to load up on the other positions and just assume McCaffrey is going to be that stud for you at running back.
Well, I think what happens there too is that to me, what I've noticed is there's pretty significant tier breaks, right? So like if it's hard to tell from this draft because it's super flex, but generally like if all the if I pick one overall and I go McCaffrey, if all the running backs are gone and my tier is like DeAndre Swift, I'll usually just pass and take receivers. Mm-hmm. But I think if you can get one of those, normally it's like Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you can get one of those guys to fall, that's always sweet. But to me, there's a pretty not significant, but to me, the tier break is there where it's hard to pass on, DK Metcalf for DeAndre Swift, right? Mm-hmm. So, but in super flex, it's different. And look at that, it's CeeDee Lamb, the 4-5 turn. I mean, normally he's a first round pick these days, isn't he?
I think he's the number 1 wide receiver in football at this point. Actually,
that's right. That's right.
So following the Herbert and Tom Brady picks at the top of round 3, we mentioned Clyde Edwards-Helaire. A.J. Brown went to Noah Ruddell's team, who opened with the 2 running backs. So he went Kamara, Eckler, A.J. Brown, another wide receiver, which we'll get to in round 4. Mike Randle followed that with Nick Chubb. He is also through 4 picks without a quarterback to this point. So we have a quarterback now for Noah Ruddell. So why don't we break down his team instead of continuing with the picks in order? Adam, we've got Alvin Kamara, we've got Austin Eckler, we've got A.J. Brown, we've got Terry McLaurin as the 10th wide receiver off the board, with the 4th from the last pick in round 4. Then he took, Ryan Tannehill? I'm having trouble reading the Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan.
He's 16 in round 5. Adam, what do you think of Noah's team so far?
Yeah, I really like. Kamara is going to be, he's going to get a ton of work there now. And so Kamara is a fine pick. I don't have him as my RB3, but that's fine. Eckler, I love Austin Eckler, PPR monster. He could finish top 5 for sure as a running back. AJ Brown, fine. McLaurin, I'm high on McLaurin this year. Every time I target him in the 3rd round, though, I can never get him. He always goes like a pick in front of me. So I like that start. The problem you have with that is now your QB1 is Matt Ryan, right, in the super flex. So if he's going to need to, I think, take 3, depending on who. He took him as QB 16, right, in the 5th round. So, and there's still, 12 picks or more till it gets back to him. So, and he doesn't have a tight end yet either. So yeah, we'll see about the starts. I like the first 4 picks. I like the actual players, but as far as the roster build, let's see if he can get a couple more QBs.
Mm-hmm. We are in the middle of round 5. We just had a burst of picks at the board, so it's kind of the board's catching up with picks as they're being made. Mike Randle also arrived in round 5 without a quarterback, also took his first one at that spot. So let's recap what he's got to this point. Devontae Adams in round 1, Calvin Ridley in round 2, Nick Chubb in round 3, Chris Carson in round 4, who I always like, especially in round 4, RB 16 off the board here, which I think is well below what his ceiling is for this year. Certainly a fair price in terms of draft ADP. And then Tua Tagovailoa as QB 17 in round 5. Jared, what do you think of Mike's team so far?
Yeah, similar build to Noah, right? Where, Mike started 2 wide receivers versus Noah's 2 running backs, but, they both wait till round 5 to take their first quarterback. I'm with Adam. I think if these guys can get 3 locked in starting quarterbacks, or even guys you expect to start the majority of the weeks, I'd be fine taking Justin Fields as quarterback 2 or quarterback 3 for one of these teams. But if they can get 3 locked in starters, I think they can survive at quarterback and just, hope those running backs and wide receivers sort of beat the rest of the league.
And Mike Randle just said in the YouTube chat that he thought a quarterback was going to make it back who did not and just got picked later in that 5th round. We'll get to who that is in a minute. But Moving on with the round 3 picks, we had Matthew Stafford come off the board as QB 10 to Ian Allen's team. He followed with another quarterback the next round. Jack Miller took DK Metcalf as the 7th wide receiver off the board, which solid value for DK Metcalf, I would say, especially following Russell Wilson. So you like that stack to help build the base for Jack's team right there. Joe Mixon, the 12th running back taken, that went to Sigmund Bloom. After Darren Waller in round 1, Dak Prescott in round 2. Jalen Hurts, the 11th quarterback, to Sean Koerner's team. He opened quarterback, tight end, quarterback. So that's certainly not a build that you're going to see in any other format, right, Adam?
Yeah, for sure. That's this is why I love this format, and just to see the different, the different builds that all these guys are doing. Like normally, I can sit in front of an FFPC draft and I can almost tell you who the next guy is going to pick. Mm-hmm. But here, it's so cool to see like the different the ways that the guys are building it. And I like Jack's start. I love Hawkinson this year. He's actually my tight end 3, so I love that he got him as his tight end 5. And I'm interested to see where he goes from there. He was able to get Trey Lance, which is pretty awesome. QB 18. He's been having a good camp. So we'll see if they can if he's okay with that and just stay in there and leaving that as it is. And it's interesting to see Geller. I'm surprised that there's not more receivers taken. So you have to start 3. And so I thought they would kind of fly off the board a little bit more. I thought it'd be more of a quarterback receiver heavy draft, and it's just running backs galore. Crescenzo with 4 of them through five rounds, and Guilds has none through 6. So it's going to be interesting.
It's especially fun to watch 2 builds like that happen right next to each other,
right?
And then wonder if either's going to benefit, or by the end of the season they're just both sitting in the middle, and it was talking about it for no reason. But it's fun to watch as it happens and then see it play out. Jonathan Taylor went with the 10th pick of round 3, RB 13. So, it's one draft, but I wonder if we're starting to see the slide for him given the injuries in Indy. We had Carson Wentz with the foot injury. We had Quentin Nelson, such a big Carson Wentz fan that he decided to get the same foot injury. So both of those guys are out for a little while. If you are a football player in Indianapolis, you should probably have your feet up for the next few weeks. What do you think, Jared? Is Jonathan Taylor going to fall out of round 1?
He might. I think he should. I'm not taking him in round 1 right now. I was curious to see where he was going to go. I was curious to see where the Cowboys were going to go with the Dak Prescott shoulder thing. It doesn't, Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. I don't think they were discounted at all here. Jonathan Taylor definitely was. He's been a top 10 running back in ADP, a top 8 running back in ADP for a lot of the spring and summer. I'm concerned. Quentin Nelson is a big loss. Ryan Kelly has been sidelined in training camp with an injury we don't know much about still, but we'll see on that. So, the Colts O-line, which, looked like one of the best in the league, has some question marks at this point. And then the Carson Wentz injury. I mean, Jonathan Taylor needs positive game script to be, an elite back, because I think he's still going to lose that, catch up, passing down stuff to Naheem Hines. So, the Wentz injury, if they're forced to go with Jacob Eason for any part of this season, I think that's bad news for JT.
Or Nick Foles time. That's going to be fun. They're already talking. He's already talking to the Colts practically in Bears press conferences.
Yep.
Let's move to Anthony Crescenzo's team, because he's next in round 3. Plus, he's through 6 picks now and still does not have a quarterback. So we've got Derrick Henry, we've got Saquon Barkley, we've got Keenan Allen, his 3rd round pick, then Miles Sanders, Chase Edmonds in round 5, and Chris Godwin around the round 6 turn. So, I mean, certainly building nice group, a strong group of running back. I would assume that he's done at this point, or at least close to done with running back. 2 good receivers to start things out, but hasn't hit quarterback, which you're probably going to want to start 2 of them as often as possible. Hasn't hit tight end yet, which is a higher value position here than most formats. Adam, does this one make you nervous, this kind of build?
Yeah. Sorry, are you talking about Crescenzo?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. If you have to ask me in a regular draft, I lean more towards 0 RB than I do robust running back, just because you want to fill those flex spots with like the highest scoring players. And generally those are going to be receivers for where you have to draft them. This build would scare me. It would make more like sense to me if like running backs were falling, you know what I mean? Like, and he was able to get some crazy value, but I just feel like, I'm not a huge Chase Edmonds fan. Sanders is I'm not sold on that situation yet, although he has been catching a lot of passes in camp, which is great. But yeah, this roster construction, he lucked out a little bit. Like I like Godwin more than Chase and Jones. Jared, me, you, and Gilge are going to have to fight over this whole Jamar Chase situation he's got going on. But yeah, it's he kind of lucked out there getting Godwin, which is great. But I don't know what he's going to do at quarterback.
For me, the curious picks are Miles Sanders because he was the 14th running back off the board here. So that's ahead of where he is in positional ADP. Chase Edmonds, also ahead of where he is positional ADP. And instead of Edmonds, you could have had like Baker Mayfield as your first quarterback and saved that running back spot for another one later on. Let's see, could have taken Kirk Cousins at the Miles Sanders spot, was the next quarterback off the board. So, we'll see how it works out. But I would say those are the two spots that I would question in particular so far.
Yeah, I have an issue with taking any player in the first 5 or 6 rounds that like can't start for you. What I mean by that is like this league, you start 2 running backs and you have that flex spot. Well, I guess with a super flex spot, you can start 4 running backs, right? So I guess that makes a bit more sense here. But still, like you don't want a running back in that flex spot. So basically, that Chase Edmonds pick, he's taking a bench player in the 5th round. So that's kind of my issue with the strategy. There are still like 10, quote unquote locked in starting quarterbacks. So maybe he can get 2-3 of them. We'll see how it ends up. But yeah, definitely not how I'd be building my roster in this league.
Maybe we've got a closet Ryan Fitzpatrick fan, or I don't know Anthony very well. Maybe he's not in the closet. Maybe he's just an unabashed lover of Ryan Fitzpatrick, which I think most of us are. Right after him, the Guilds, we talked about his start with 2 wide receivers, not taking a quarterback in the first 2 rounds. He then came back to the 3-4 turn and took Joe Burrow and Ryan Tannehill. Adam, does that make you feel better about starting with no quarterback in the first 2 rounds? What do you think of Burrow and Tannehill as his top 2 quarterbacks?
Yeah, I like that a lot. He waited, he showed patience, and it definitely worked out for him. And those were probably the 2 guys I would have taken too. So yeah, I like that start for him a lot, and I like that he's sticking with the strategy of the 4 receivers, 2 quarterbacks, and he's just going to wait on running back. So yes, stick with the strategy. I wouldn't have chosen the 2 receivers he did at the 5-6, but whatever. I like the strategy, and Burrow Tannehill is a nice combo there.
Yeah, I think waiting on those 2 quarterbacks at that spot is probably landed about as well as he could have hoped for it to be. Jared, that I started draft season way out on Joe Burrow because of the knee stuff. I did look further, though, into the performance of quarterbacks and their returns from ACL tears and found that it really wasn't as big a worry as I thought it was. And then when you consider his likely regression on touchdowns versus last year, the talent he has around him, I'm now okay with Joe Burrow in that range. And I think he and Ryan Tannehill together here as the top 2 quarterbacks for a team that started with a couple of top-tier wide receivers is a nice way to build this team.
Yeah, all positive on Burrow's recovery from the ACL. It was actually a multi-ligament injury. It sounds like he actually added some arm strength this offseason, loaded group of pass catchers. O-line's still a concern, but I think, it's funny, as you've come up on Burrow, his ADP has actually come down a bit. He was going in the top 10 among quarterbacks this spring. Now he's kind of going where Gills took him here around quarterback 12. But yeah, so he gets Burrow and Tannehill there as his top 2 quarterbacks, and then he comes back and he stacks them both with Julio Jones, Jamar Chase in the next 2 rounds. So, I don't like Chase at wide receiver 16. A lot of smart drafters do, so I might be wrong on him. But at least he got the stack with Chase and Burrow there.
Yeah, I noticed that after I commented. So I get that, but this isn't like I think stacking is best used in like large field tournaments, and this really isn't one. So I don't think you necessarily have to stack. I think it's nice, and if you like those receivers and it fits in with your quarterbacks and it works for you, then awesome. But I don't think you necessarily have to stack in this.
Yeah, to me, Chase as the 16th wide receiver is a little bit of reaching to complete that stack, which can kind of negate the value. But we don't really have precedent on Chase missing the year, coming into Cincinnati. Maybe he's the number 1 wide receiver right away. We'll see how it goes. We could quibble about specific players at any spot, but we'll see how the team plays out. Going back the other way in the draft, because we just talked about the 2 teams at that turn, Eliot Christ picking after Geller and Crescenzo when you go back in round 4. He had the Jonathan Taylor pick that we talked about before, Justin Jefferson in round 4, then followed with Allan Robinson and DJ Moore as the 18th wide receiver off the board. I got to think he's probably happy with the wide receivers that made it to him after he avoided that position for the first 3 picks. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, I think Elliott's crushing this draft again to get Kyler and Lamar, to get 2 of those elite quarterbacks. To get Jonathan Taylor at RB13, like I said, I have my concerns with him, but at RB13, I think that's a fair price. That's about where he should be going. So that's nice. And then Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 9, I think that's a couple spots cheaper than he should be. Allan Robinson, to me, he's a top 10 wide receiver. He's been a top 10 wide receiver the past 2 years with crap at quarterback. And I think whether it's Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, he's going to get better quarterback play this season. So I think he's a steal at wide receiver 14, and then DJ Moore at wide receiver 18 is just fine. So I love Elliott's start.
Yeah, by the way, Allan Robinson came off the board after Adam Thielen in this one. Adam Thielen, the 13th wide receiver off the board to Ian Allen's team in the middle of round 5. So that's a surprising move. I would take Allan Robinson over several of the wideouts that wound up going ahead of him here. Looking at Sean Koerner's team, we had let's see if I can try to read it. We had Najee Harris as the 15th running back off the board. So we've talked about some guys being reached for and other guys falling. Najee Harris at RB15 is nice value versus where he tends to go. And wrapping up Sean Koerner's team to this point, we've got the Josh Allen start. We've got George Kittle as the 3rd tight end, the gap between him and the rest of the position. Jalen Hurts, certainly some risk, but also upside as the 2nd quarterback in round 3 and the 11th quarterback off the board. Then Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, still have my doubts about, but RB20 in this draft. Adam, it seems like Sean Koerner's getting some good value on these guys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, RB20 is sweet. I mean, I was looking at the ADP, like I said, in Fantasy Mojo. Normally he goes early 2, 3, like mid 4th. He got him here in the 5th. So I think that's pretty awesome. And listen, for Swift, like I know some people have him completely faded. Some people really like him. Like I think there's a path for him to be awesome. Like I think there's a path for him to be, Alvin Kamara-esque. If he's the pass catching back there and they're always losing, there's a shot at him getting a ton of catches. So he's a guy that, although I don't love, I have been taking some just in case. So yeah, to get him there at RB20 is awesome. Alongside of a workhorse back like Najee Harris, just to get 2 possibly top 8 quarterbacks, a top 3 or 4 tight end, and to still get Robert Woods and Robbie Anderson, who I know Draft Sharks were very high on both those guys. So I really like Sean's start. And like Jared said, I love Elliott's start for sure. And to kind of go back to Noah Ruddell, he was able to get that Justin Fields piece there. So that ends up helping him out to be able to get at least one more QB. Fields has a top 8 upside too. And Crescenzo is just refusing to take quarterbacks. So this is going to be interesting.
I think Adam's got a date. He's trying to push me ahead to future picks every time I go to him.
That's right.
Well, we'll be curious to hear tomorrow what your plans were for after DS Invitational Night 1. We'll probably stay on this, by the way, for somewhere in between an hour and an hour and a half. We're already almost an hour into the thing, so I think it's probably going to be closer to the hour and a half end. But we'll stay with this at the very least through 10, 11 rounds each night. We've got tonight, we've got tomorrow night, we've got Thursday, and then next week we're also going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you're probably going to be sick of all of us by the end of that, if not by the end of tonight. But, let's hope we keep it fresh for at least tonight. So getting back to the pick, Sigmund Bloom took his 2nd tight end just 3 rounds after taking Darren Waller in round 1. He took Kyle Pitts. I know he's big on seeing the vision for Kyle Pitts. I personally don't see it at the tight end 4 level. I don't see it stacking him with Darren Waller, but we do have the tight end premium. We do have the 2 flex spots. So if you're going to do it somewhere, this is a spot to do it. I think in this particular case, you had to pass on, not exciting quarterbacks, but Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence were the next 2 QBs off the board when Kyle Pitts went in round 4. Jared, what do you think of that move?
I don't hate Pitts in round 4 in tight end premium. I prefer TJ Hawkinson, but it's close. I mean, I think Hawkinson to me is a better bet for volume, but I think Pitts is in the better offense. He's probably better touchdown bet because of that. I swear every Kyle Pitts highlight I see from training camp, he split out wide. So, I do believe he's, basically going to be playing wide receiver for Atlanta. And really, he should finish second on that team in targets this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have a lot. I say I don't have a lot. I don't think I really have any Pitts, but I think I do want some shares because, like you said, Jared, I think he's going to be playing receiver for them. A guy I've been taking actually a lot of is Hayden Hurst because I really think that, if Pitts is split out wide, I think Hurst is going to stay at tight end, obviously. So he's got some upside in the, he's going in like the 17th round in these FFPC tight end premiums. So I think he's a nice shot there.
TJ Hawkinson, as you mentioned, went off the board right after Kyle Pitts. I certainly prefer Hawkinson as well, but it's I'm not going to argue with you if you just say you prefer Kyle Pitts. Kirk Cousins came off the board the next pick. He was the second quarterback for Ian Allen's team following Matthew Stafford, Ezekiel Elliott, Travis Kelce, his previous picks. He then took Adam Thielen in the next round as the 13th wide receiver off the board, as we mentioned. Tyler Lockett, Brandon Ayuk after that. So he's got a plan going there. Tight end first, then the stud running back, 2 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers. There's a pattern forming on Ian Allen's team. What do you think about his team so far, Jared?
Ian's team's fine. I want to go back to Jack Miller's team because Jones a bit early for me, but again, the fact that he got Wilson in round 2, I think, I like that start. He gets the stack with Metcalf and Wilson. Love that. Gets Hawkinson at tight end 5. Love that. Trey Lance to me at quarterback 18. That, to me, that's the best value at quarterback in this draft so far. Everything out of Niners camp is that Lance has been outplaying Garoppolo so far, and Shanahan is saying that, Garoppolo is still a starter. If this keeps up, he's not going to be able to keep Garoppolo out of the starting lineup from week 1. So, and if Lance starts all season, I think he is a good bet for top 10 numbers because of the rushing, and he has top 5 upside because of that rushing and because of the weapons in San Francisco. So love that pick from Jack. He could have got the double stack though with the Seattle wide receivers with Tyler Lockett in round 6. I would have gone that direction. I was kind of disappointed he didn't. I should probably be happy that he didn't because I ultimately have to beat Jack's team in this contest. But he ended up taking his 3rd quarterback in Baker Mayfield there over Tyler Lockett. And Jack is definitely going with the same strategy he did last year when he won his league, where he took the elite running back in round 1 and then just ignored the position for the next 10 or so rounds.
I like taking Baker Mayfield to ensure the Trey Lance pick the next round because even if we don't get Trey Lance as the starter to begin the season, I agree there's huge upside to him, but now you still have those 2 quarterbacks to open the season even if you don't have Lance. And obviously, if you have 3 of them, then you're going to get starting weeks from all of them throughout the year in those spots.
Yeah, I just think he could have waited to the 7th round to get that 3rd quarterback, but Jack's smarter than I am, so.
I wonder, too, if the 2 wide receivers with the quarterback would be a little bit of overkill in what's like a small field tournament, as Adam kind of alluded to. It's not, you're not beating 2,000 other teams. You're just trying to beat 71 other teams here.
Yeah, maybe, but I think, Lockett at wide receiver 21 is a value, even outside of the stack. Mm-hmm. And that's such a concentrated passing game where, Lockett and Metcalf are going to combine for about half of the targets there.
Yeah, so you're saying that's one of the few offenses where you might make a push like that?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I can get behind that. So we talked about Jack's team, talked about Ian's team there. After that, Mike Randle took his first quarterback, as we mentioned, in round 5. That was Tua. Followed that with Cooper Kupp at wide receiver 22, a good wide receiver value. He's got 3 wideouts on his team. Still got Nick Chubb and Chris Carson in rounds 3 and 4. Now has 2 quarterbacks on his roster as well. Took Ryan Fitzpatrick in round 7, reunited him with Tua Tagovailoa. So that should – I wonder if that's going to backfire on him, though, because it's going to make Tua nervous throughout the season to have Fitzpatrick close behind him.
Yeah. It should.
Adam, are we worried about this?
It should.
Logan, I should say, anytime you have somebody with that kind of beard behind you, it should make you nervous, whether he's challenging for your job or not. Logan Thomas, the first tight end for Mike Randle's team in round 8, followed that Fitzpatrick pick. So Mike Randle's got Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, Nick Chubb, Chris Carson, Tua, Cooper Kupp, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas, a tight end 8's a bit early for me. What do you think about him this year, Adam? I don't know if I've heard from you on Logan Thomas.
Yeah, there's nothing to hear from me on Logan Thomas. I don't know. I feel like he's just, a splash guy, like a 1 year, former Bill there. So I am familiar with him. It's not like I've been targeting. I've either been targeting like the elite tight ends slash Hawkinson up at the top, or I'm waiting and maybe taking Tyler Higbee in that range, or punting and taking 2 or 3 later on. So I just feel like that range of tight end is just hard. It's unpredictable. You don't really know. So I mean, he stacked them, and there's a lot more. There's a lot of talent there, right? So there's Gibson can catch, McLaurin, Curtis Samuel. There's just not going to be the targets he was getting last year. So I've just been kind of fading him.
Yeah, he particularly beefed up his target count later in the season when they had some injuries, both at running back and wide receiver spots. Terry McLaurin went down for a little bit of time. So Logan Thomas was a big volume eater. I feel a little bit better about him since they extended his contract, but it also wasn't a huge extension. So it's not like they consider him a cornerstone. They're just keeping him around. I think he's okay at the bottom of tight end 1 range. I think it's a little bit early for him here, but obviously can't complain too much about a round 8 tight end and tight end premium. Following Logan Thomas was Michael Carter, and that was the Justin Fields team that Adam wanted us to get to much earlier, but I'm going to take my time getting there, Adam. I'm not going to go over the speed limit. We've got Noah Ruddell's team now. He was through 4 picks without a quarterback. It was Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin starting things off. Then Matt Ryan is QB 16. Not the guy that I would pick at quarterback because I don't like Matt Ryan this year, but tough to argue too much with him as QB 16. But now we're kind of seeing what you have to do when you don't get a quarterback early in the Superflex format. So in between Matt Ryan, Justin Fields as the 20th quarterback, took T. Higgins, Michael Carter, Jerry Jeudy as the 40th wide receiver, so good value there. But specifically with the quarterbacks, Jared, do you think that if you were in Noah's spot now, would you regret not taking quarterback earlier?
No, but I would have taken one with one of those next 2 picks. I'm not sure who it would be. I don't have my rankings in front of me, but do
you think that not taking Ryan Fitzpatrick instead of Justin Fields to stack with Terry McLaurin was a mistake there?
No, I don't, because I like Fields. There's enough of a gap for me between Fields and Fitz that I would have ignored the stack and taken Fields there. But again, I would have taken a 3rd quarterback, and maybe he's still going to get one here in the 10th or 11th. But I just think there is a chance, and the more I hear out of Chicago, they seem like they might be stubborn and stick with Andy Dalton for too long. So there's a chance that we don't see Fields until the second half of the season.
Oh my God, I hope that we don't get that. But I have to remember that the Bills chose to start Nathan Peterman over Josh Allen. Ooh. That lasted about 12 minutes. The Texans decided to start Tom Savage over Deshaun Watson. That lasted about 15 minutes. I mean, granted, Andy Dalton is a much better player than either of those guys, but I can't – it hurts me to know that it's possible that we get 14 starts from Andy Dalton this year. It takes some of my heart every time that I read something along those lines.
You have to remember, Matt, coaches aren't very smart. They just know the right people. Okay. And then they stay in the circle for 50 years. Okay. Justin Fields,
I have to remind myself too, every time that it comes up, I scoff at it. And then I'm like, well, wait a second. He comes from the same team that did this with Patrick Mahomes, sat him behind Alex Smith, and watched it work. So, I mean, it shouldn't be shocking if we get a Patrick Mahomes first season from Justin Fields. I still hope it doesn't happen. I'm not going to bet that he sits all season because I don't think that this Bears team will be as good as that Chiefs team was. Right. But I have to remind myself that it is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Smith was good for that Chiefs team, and I believe they made the playoffs that year, right? So, yes. I have no issue even with starting Andy Dalton the first few weeks. And if he's playing well and they're winning, stick with him. I kind of don't expect that to happen. And if they're not winning, if he's not playing well, then you got to move to Fields. I hope we at least see him in that case.
Yeah, a couple of things on this team too. So Fields at QB 20. So in the FFPC Superflexes, he's going at the 4-5 turn. Justin Fields is. So to get him in the mid-7th is pretty sweet. QB 20, and I think Jared, I know you mentioned him taking another quarterback. That Jerry Jeudy wide receiver 40 is absurd. So I don't think I would pass on Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver 40. I think I would have taken Jeudy, and then maybe he's just going to take Dalton when he thinks it's time. And then he's got his his Ryan and then his Fields/Dalton for a second quarterback. So I mean I would never be able to pass on Jeudy as wide receiver 40.
No, I think Michael Carter at running back 29 would have been the one to pass on.
Sure. Yeah, I would have. Right, I would have passed on Carter before Judy for sure.
The problem at quarterback now is like no one sticks out,
Mm-hmm.
so he's probably just like hoping he's going to wait, and one of these guys who is just going to be on the field will kind of make it back to him in the 10th round.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting at this point that through the first 3 rounds, we saw 12 of them off the board, but now we're almost through round 9. There's still 8 teams starters. We have 24 quarterbacks off the board through 9 rounds. So, I mean, it peters out some, and then you're kind of guessing where they're going to go, though. So, you have to balance the risk with what you're looking at. Next to Noah Ruddell, we have Nelson Sousa, who took Patrick Mahomes as the first quarterback off the board in round 1. He hasn't taken another quarterback since. So it is his and one other team that are sitting with fewer than 2 quarterbacks now. We're going to talk about the other team in a few minutes, but Nelson started with Mahomes, Antonio Gibson, CEH, Myles Gaskin was his 4th round pick at RB17. So a little bit early for Gaskin. Clearly he believes in Gaskin this year. Mike Evans is wide receiver 12. That's also a tiny bit earlier than positional ADP for Evans. Josh Jacobs in round 6 as his 4th running back. So it'll be interesting to see if he stops at 4, takes maybe one more. Michael Thomas as the 27th wide receiver off the board. A lot of I'm going to believe in this guy picks for Nelson. I would be curious to know from him whether they are guys that in general he believes in for this season, or if it's kind of chances he's taking to win in this particular format.
Yeah, let's see if we can't get Nelson on one of these shows to get his takes on these guys. I'd be interested to hear. With Gaskin, if you expect him to play the role he did last year when he was healthy, he's probably worth that pick at RB17. Thomas is just a bet on him probably beating, the timeline we have for him so far and him staying healthy the rest of the way, and probably even Jameis Winston being under center for New Orleans. So it's a lot of ifs for me. It's too early on Michael Thomas for my liking, but Nelson obviously believes in him. Interesting build having the one quarterback and also 0 tight ends through 9 rounds in this tight end premium format. So interested to see how he builds out the rest of this team.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have to keep in mind as we're reviewing these drafts afterward that there might have been some auto picks mixed in for some teams here. So we'll ask about some of the more interesting picks. We'll have some of these drafters on as podcast guests, but some of them might not be because maybe it was picks that they didn't mean to get. Jarvis Landry followed Michael Thomas for Nelson's team. DJ Chark, the next wide receiver after that. I agree it's earlier than I would take Michael Thomas. We'll see if that was a purposeful pick for him. I think one good thing about Michael Thomas at this point is that Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway are going so late that you can handcuff Michael Thomas fairly easily toward the end of your draft and cushion the blow for whatever time Michael Thomas misses there. Bob Harris has 3 quarterbacks now, took Ben Roethlisberger, and I was talking about old quarterbacks before, and Bob Harris now has Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Ben Roethlisberger, so he is not interested in you until you have had your first bout of arthritis.
Combined age well over 100.
Yes, but hey, I think it worked out for him, right? I mean, I think waiting, and Big Ben's a nice QB 22, and he's his 3rd, and Crescenzo is going to be sending him some trade offers, I think, for a quarterback.
So for Bob's team, we had Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. He took Dalvin Cook first, Mark Andrews, David Montgomery in round 5, Kenny Galladay is the 24th wide receiver off the board. So a little bit of belief in Kenny Galladay there, and then did not take Daniel Jones in round 9 for the stack there. So must think that Ben Roethlisberger has a greater outlook this year than Daniel Jones. Damian Harris in round 8, Cortland Sutton in round 7 for Bob's team, and Ben Roethlisberger, as we mentioned, in round 9. Pat Thorman at the 1-2 turn, sitting on 2 quarterbacks at this point. We mentioned Justin Herbert back in round 3, got Trevor Lawrence in round 5. Since that one, took Deontay Johnson in round 6. Darrell Henderson off the board at RB23 in round 7. I think that's a fair level for Darrell Henderson. I would probably take him a couple more spots above that in running back ADP, but I think anywhere in that range is fair with plenty of upside beyond.
Yeah, I like Pat's team a lot looking through it now. Again, he gets McCaffrey sort of the anchor at running back, so he's only taken one more running back through, over his last 8 picks here. He's strong at wide receiver. Hopkins, CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson, Laviska Shenault, Mike Williams. Has 2 solid quarterbacks in Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. They're both stacked. Herbert with Mike Williams, Trevor Lawrence with Laviska Shenault. So, to me, he has to, build some running back depth, get his tight ends, but I like the start here for Pat.
Yeah, I love Visca, love Mike Williams. I'm starting to wonder though, is Visca maybe overvalued with like the thought of ETN getting all that like underneath work, getting, that's kind of concerns me. Is I don't see Visca as like a downfield alpha. I see him as more of a like an underneath slot type guy, and I'm wondering if ETN might devalue him a little bit.
I think he's. Go ahead, Matt.
No, you go.
I think Visca's best after the catch, but I think he can be a downfield guy. And some of the stuff I've read out of Jacksonville, I think the new coaching staff sort of views him as more of a traditional wide receiver and less of that gadget player, which hurts a little. Like you wish he would continue to get the carries that we see help someone like Robert Woods and Tyreek Hill add fantasy value. But I think the new staff views him as more of a traditional wideout. So ETN might hurt a bit, but I think there's a chance that Shenault leads the Jags wide receivers and targets this season.
I think he's going low enough to factor in some of that risk too. I mean, a wide receiver 37 in this particular draft, and that's right around where he tends to go, maybe even a little bit later. I think there's not a whole lot of risk from there. He can have just an okay season and finish there, and I think there's upside beyond that. When you're stacking with the quarterback too, I mean, there's certainly further upside to picking Shenault in that range. So let's bring things back in the other direction. Already mentioned most of the picks. We did get a third quarterback for Noah Ruddell's team, who we were talking about with Justin Fields and Matt Ryan before. Got Sam Darnold as QB 26 off the board in round 10. Pretty good quarterback 3, I would say, for that team's build. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I think he must have heard me on the podcast talking about Sam Darnold. But yeah, I think it's a great pick. It's interesting because you get all these Panthers skill guys being drafted, in the top 7 rounds, right? And it's like, well, who's the quarterback that's going to throw them the rock? Is it really the fact that we don't see much rushing upside for Darnold that pushes him so far back? Is it, the fact that he hasn't been great? I mean, I think getting away from Adam Gase is just the greatest thing that can happen to you as a football player. I said earlier, like, coaches are idiots. I mean, he's at the Mount Rushmore of dumb coaches that knew that knew the right people. You know what I mean? So I just think Darnold could smash 8 ADP. I mean, I don't know if he'll necessarily be a top 10 quarterback, but with all those receivers there and Christian McCaffrey can take any catch 80 yards to the house, like I think he's QB 26, great pick, great spot for him. And I don't think if he plays 17 games, I don't think there's any way he doesn't finish in the top, 16 or 17.
That's aggressive.
Just saying. I mean,
the nice thing about Darnold, and that's kind of what I think Noah needs to do, is just get a third locked-in starter. If Darnold doesn't get hurt, if he doesn't completely faceplant, he's going to start 17 games for Carolina. And I think that is what was most important for Noah to get at that third quarterback spot.
Yeah, I would have taken Daniel Jones as my guy there, but I mean, if you prefer Sam Darnold to Daniel Jones, I can't argue too strongly against that, especially considering their relative surrounding weapons, which is Darnold certainly better set up in that area. Noah might have gotten a little bit lucky with Mike Randle taking Taysom Hill as the 25th quarterback off the board, his third quarterback in round 10. I mean, most of us expect it to be Jameis Winston for the Saints, but it's a competition. I mean, the Saints have indicated all along the way that it's a true competition. And last year we thought Jameis Winston was going to be the guy stepping in when Drew Brees went down, and it wasn't. So it could still be Taysom Hill, the quarterback there, and he could have Jalen Hurts upside for sure if he is the starter for the Saints this year.
Right. I don't mind Taysom Hill there. It's a bit earlier than I would take him, but if it's your third quarterback, like, you're not, even if Taysom Hill only starts half the season or 6 games, or like, as your third quarterback is just kind of a bonus. And yeah, like you said, Matt, when Hill is under center and when he's starting, he's a good bet to give you top 10 production because of the rushing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Taysom Hill's going to start this year. Like, he might not start the season as the quarterback, but he's going to play. Whether it's an injury to Winston or whether it's just frustrating interceptions by Winston. I mean, Winston is not what you want at the helm.
Hey, take it easy on Jameis, okay?
No, I'm just saying, without Michael Thomas, he's not the quarterback you want on that team. I mean, listen, I know a guy that's got 50% ownership of Traquan Smith in the FFPC. Okay, I know a guy, but you don't want Traquan Smith as your number one receiver with Jameis Winston at quarterback. So I think they it doesn't matter what I think, but I think they should go with more of a read option with Taysom Hill, with Alvin Kamara, and the ground game until Michael Thomas comes back, and then kind of see how it goes from there. But Taysom Hill is going to play.
We cross 9 o'clock in the Eastern time zone, and it is hot take time from the crowd hammer over there. We've got Jameis Winston is definitely not starting every game, even if he wins the job this year. We got Sam Darnold is going to finish QB8 if he spends the whole season in the lineup. I like it. I'm just going to move on to another team and open it up to Adam. Let me know what his hottest take is from that team. Before we get away from Mike Randle's team, though, he did follow Logan Thomas with Robert Tonyan as tight end 9 off the board. So, I mean, a couple of guys that have generally slipped outside of the top 12, going inside the top 10 to Mike Randle, playing a couple flags with those tight ends. Do those surprise you as his 2 tight end picks, Jared?
They do. And, Tom, like we said, Thomas was stacked with Fitzpatrick, so I'm sure that, bumped Thomas up Mike's rankings a few spots. Tonyan, that's 3-4 tight end spots too high for me. Tyler Higbee at tight end 12. Man, Sigmund Bloom's tight ends. Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts.
Yeah,
that's going to be tough to beat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like his tight ends a lot. Obviously, Zach Wilson as the QB2 is a little scary, but we'll see if he can add on to it. Not that there's much left.
Yeah, we've got 28 quarterbacks off the board, including Deshaun Watson, the most recent, and he got past Sigmund Bloom's spot. So we'll see who Sigmund adds. I'm sure he's going to get another quarterback at some point. We'll see who he's eyeing at this point with 28 of those guys off the board. Andy Dalton's still on the board for somebody who believes Matt Nagy at this point. Going back to Jack's team, Jack Miller, we've talked about a few times. Since the Baker Mayfield pick, got Chase Claypool as wide receiver 29, Deebo Samuel as wide receiver 35, Devontae Smith as wide receiver 41, Raheem Mostert as RB 32, and then Elijah Moore as wide receiver 50 in round 11. Jared, any of those picks that you dislike?
No, none of them. A lot of young bucks at wide receiver. He got the Deebo stack with Trey Lance. Jack's just hoping the same exact draft plan that he won with last year can win it for him again this year.
And you could tell Jared's getting older because he's calling people young bucks now.
That's right. And listen, Jared, it's okay to not be on Devonta Smith right now. You could say it. He's hurt. Okay, it's all right. All right. Okay.
Listen, I love him long term. I haven't been taking him in redraft. I just don't see him getting the targets to pay off. An ADP that was inside the top 35 wide receivers before the injury. I'm not sure where he's dropped to now.
I'm more curious about Deebo Samuel at wide receiver 35 than Devontae Smith at wide receiver 41 because it's easier for me to see the path to targets and paying off on those targets for Devontae Smith than it is for Deebo after that incredibly short ADOT season last year. What do you think of Deebo, Jared?
I think he's fine at wide receiver 35. I think the gap between Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and ADP is too big. I mean, in this draft, we had Ayuk at wide receiver 28 and Deebo at wide receiver 35. I think that's closer to what it should be. I know San Francisco is going to be a run-leading offense, especially with Lance under center, but it's also a concentrated offense. It is Kittle, Ayuk, and Samuel, and that's about it. So, and Deebo's another guy that does some stuff on the ground, or at least he did in previous seasons, so that helps too.
I think I'm coming around to the idea that Ayuk should actually have more separation between him and Deebo because he is the truer wideout, more of the downfield guy, commanded some target share. Granted, it was with a lot of injury time for the other guys last year, but I'm starting to wonder if I've been too low on Ayuk to this point, if I'm undervaluing his upside this season.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, Matt, because I'm starting to feel the same way too. There's just so many weapons there in the passing game. There, you got Kittle, you got Deebo, but I think Ayuk, there's a path there for him to be really good. Their schedule, and again, shout out to you on that, on draftsharks.com. You did the wide receiver. Well, you did all of them, but the wide receiver strength of schedule, his schedule is such an outlier easy that he could absolutely smash if him and Trey Lance, get that connection. Ayuk, I need to get more shares of, because I could see him being that downfield threat, Debo being the underneath guy. Obviously, Kittle's going to get his, although I am a little bit lower on Kittle this year. But yeah, I think I need to get some more Ayuk.
Interesting report lately that Kittle is not catching a ton of passes through the first few days of training camp. You'd like to just discard that and say, it's George Kittle. They're going to throw him the ball. Clearly they like him, and it's just, a blip while they work to other guys. But, we'll see. I'll be interested to see where that goes.
Well, that offense is just going to look so much different if and when Trey Lance is under center. I think there's just kind of a lot of unknown there. So, and the thing with Debo and Ayuk, I just think Debo's guy that we've sort of all forgotten how good he is just because he missed the majority of last season. And the durability stuff is definitely a concern. But I just, as a talent, I just don't think there's much of a gap between Ayuk and Debo Samuel.
Yeah, we have to remind the audience or let anybody who's new know that Jared's type is the wide receiver who is a running back hiding in a wide receiver number. So, there's a little bit of that bias going on here. You'll hear him talk about Laviska Shenault, Debo Samuel, Rondale Moore. So if you are running back playing wide receiver, you are Jared's guy.
Give me those catches. Give me those rushing attempts. It all adds up.
Rushing attempts. All right. Well, let's move on from Debo talk, because I certainly don't think he's a bad pick at that level. Just somebody worth discussing. So we talked about Sigmund's team a little bit. Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts were the early picks. Dak Prescott, the early quarterback. Added Zach Wilson as his second quarterback in round 9. In between, Tyler Boyd, Odell Beckham, Amari Cooper. So I think there's a good mix of upside. Also throwing in Mecole Hardman in round 11. There's a nice mix of a base with Darren Waller, one of the top quarterbacks with Dak Prescott, and then some who could go in either direction. Amari Cooper with the ankle. We've got another floor with Tyler Boyd, but more ceiling with the other wideouts I mentioned. It's an interesting team to watch. It's going to be one to keep an eye on going forward, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. I like the way. I'm obviously super high on Mecole this year. And even Tyreek Hill's got that tendonitis issue going on right now. But I think, Mecole can get better, right? He's only going into his third year, and I really like that this start for Sig being able to get those 3 tight ends, and this might be one of the few teams that can afford to not start a second quarterback in the flex, because Higbee and Pitts have that huge upside, right? With the tight end premium. So, and even having getting AJ Dillon there, if there's an injury to Aaron Jones, or he even has some standalone value. I like the way Sig's building this team out.
Speaking of the upside that could also crash, Deshaun Watson, round 11, Deshaun Koerner's team, mentioned he started with Josh Allen. So he laid that base of a top-level quarterback. I still hate him, Adam. We have to be inaccurate. I think it's appropriate given his history. Jalen Hurts, the upside downside. Deshaun Watson could ultimately smash, could play 0 games this year. Round 11, what do you think about Deshaun Watson as a bet at this point, Jared?
Love it. I think you want to be aiming for upside in your double-digit rounds of drafts. You want to be aiming for upside with a third quarterback. Similar story with Mike taking Taysom Hill as his third quarterback. You can afford to take on more risk at that spot. Now, Sean did take Hurts, who has some risk, I think, as a third-round pick, as a guy we just haven't seen much of. But hey, the rumors are Deshaun Watson to Philadelphia. So I guess even if that happens, he's okay. He at least has the Eagles starting quarterback locked up.
Yeah, maybe he'll have the Texans starter if Hurts goes in the other direction in that trade. Following his Deshaun Watson pick was Michael Pittman at wide receiver 55. We talked about Jonathan Taylor slipping with the injuries in Indy. It has to affect Michael Pittman as well. Wide receiver 55. I haven't really seen what Michael Pittman's ADP has done over the past 2 days. Not that we've had a whole lot of time to react to it yet. Adam, do you think that's an appropriate level for Michael Pittman right now?
Yeah, Wentz isn't going to miss the whole year. I was starting to really come around on him too, because they need a receiver there to step up. You know what I mean? So I think Pittman could have certainly been that guy. Wide receiver 55, absolutely. At this point, you're throwing darts, but he could be the alpha one there. And I think if he can, what is he, his fifth receiver? So yeah, hold on to him. And hopefully when Wentz gets back, everything's clicking.
By the way, I should go back to the Sam Darnold talk on Noah Ruddell's team, and he says Darnold has plenty of rushing upside, so not worried about that. Obviously, he was watching that 44-yard touchdown run against the Broncos on a Thursday night last year. But yeah, Darnold can certainly move around. He also pointed out that Sean Koerner's 3 quarterbacks to this point all have the same bye. Now we'll see about how Deshaun Watson's bye settles out, whether he has a 17-week bye this season. But Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, both. Actually, is that right on the Week 9 bye for Jalen Hurts? I thought it was later in the season for the Eagles.
Yeah, they have the Week 14 bye. I only know that because it's an FFPC playoff week.
Yeah, so I don't. Oh, those are the picks. Those aren't the buys. That was a bit of confusion. So it's not the same buys. So we'll move on from that talk. Not a draft board that I'm used to watching the grid on and talking at the same time. Looking back, Eliot Christ's team started out with Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. We mentioned him a couple of times before. He has 3 running backs now through round 12. Followed Jonathan Taylor with Travis Etienne a few rounds later as the 24th running back off the board. Leonard Fournette was the 35th running back off the board. So I think solid value on all of those guys with a bunch of wideouts mixed in between.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a risky draft build with only the 3 running backs through round 12 there. I like the 3 guys he got. Again, I think Taylor was a fair value at RB13 at this point. Etienne's guy I've drafted kind of a lot more than I thought I would just because of where he's dropping. RB24 here. Like, I just think a team spends a first-round pick on a running back. I think Etienne's very good. I mean, he posted monster numbers at a big-time college program at Clemson, tested well at his pro day. So I just think he's going to be a big part of that offense, whether he does it alongside James Robinson or whether he sort of pushes Robinson aside. And a lot of that's going to come in the passing game, which is obviously what we want in a full PPR league like this. So I think Etienne at RB24 is good. And Leonard Fournette's a guy I've had to get myself to stop drafting just because, I don't know, I just think – I just like the ceiling on a guy who I think has a chance to be the lead ball carrier and the lead target getter in the backfield for, an offense that should be top 5 in the NFL in points. So I've been taking a lot of Leonard Fournette. We'll see how that shakes out.
I mean, you don't want to take anybody every time, but there's really no reason not to draft Leonard Fournette in a best ball league. I think when you get to a lineup setting format, it's going to be frustrating in Tampa Bay. We're not going to know every week who the running back is to start, and there will be weeks where you get it wrong. So I can see disliking Fournette there. I think best ball when he's going well into RB3 territory, there is nothing but upside from there because if he doesn't have to be the lead running back. Even if he's the top scoring running back for the Bucs this year, it's going to be a valuable guy to have on your roster.
Yeah, I like the build. I mean, he's going to absolutely smash at quarterback. He's gonna smash at receiver just due to the volume, right? I mean, he's got a couple really, really good ones: Jefferson, Robinson, Moore. But he's also got 6, 7 of them. So he's gonna have monster weeks there. It's just running back. He's thin, but I think he'll probably add some more. But you only need to start 2. So I think if he can get a couple of maybe 0 RB candidates later on, some guys who catch passes, or if he can get some of these, Jamal Williams is gone, David Johnson. So yeah, there's a couple targets. James Conner's gone. So a lot of the guys that you might want to take here to kind of supplement it are gone. But again, he's just gonna, if his running backs stay healthy, I think he's in really good shape. He does need to add another tight end or 2.
I think that if I had that team, you don't need it, but he had 2 shots at Jameis Winston before he came off the board in round 13, I'm sorry, as the 29th quarterback off the board. I think I would have taken Jameis Winston over Jalen Waddle. Leonard Fournette was the next pick there. So Jalen Waddle versus Jameis Winston, I think I would have gone that direction. Also passed on Carson Wentz just now to take Corey Davis. So I think I would have liked to have seen one of those picks be that 3rd quarterback, especially with those guys still on the board, not needing either to hit. I mean, you'll be okay if they don't work out, but there's upside to that 3rd guy at that range.
Yeah, Wentz would have made sense for that team. I don't have Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson's buys in front of me, but assuming they're not in the first 5-6 weeks of the season, Wentz would have made sense as a guy who should be back on the field by the time Kyler and Lamar have their buys. But I honestly don't mind just taking those 2 elite quarterbacks and being done at the position. Kyler and Lamar are both probably going to post top 12 numbers in 14 or 15 weeks. And even when they don't, again, it's super flex best ball though. So you can have, one of your wide receivers go off, like we said, Eliot has, 7 wide receivers. He can have one of those receivers fill that super flex spot and be okay.
We're going to stick with this draft for a few more minutes, but not too much longer. Adam's going to turn into a pumpkin. You can already see his chin heading in that direction. We did have finally some quarterbacks go to Anthony Crescenzo's team. And it's interesting that he waited until round 13, waited until the 30th quarterback, and still got 2 guys that are probably going to start the most games for their teams this year. Now, we could quibble over whether Cam Newton is one of those guys, but let's run through his roster real quick and get to those quarterbacks that were just picks. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, the first 2 rounds, Keenan Allen in round 3, then Miles Sanders, Chase Edmonds, Chris Godwin, Brandon Cooks, Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Parker, then Zach Ertz as the tight end 11. So some belief in Ertz, I guess, staying in Philly there, or maybe going somewhere where he's the top guy. Hunter Henry as tight end 17, then Anthony Ferkser as tight end 18. And then his last 2 picks, Carson Wentz, Cam Newton. So I think we're all probably not expecting Carson Wentz to be his starter for the first couple of weeks. We'll see a 5 to 12 week return timeline. So we're all guessing how long that'll actually be. But Carson Wentz should play at some point, and he should be the Colts starter once he's ready, unless they do import Nick Foles. Cam Newton, that's a good value at this stage of the draft. Not somebody I was even thinking about, but Cam Newton has high weekly upside whenever he is in the lineup for the Patriots.
Yeah, that's really good value on Newton there. The patience to wait that out. And maybe he takes Jacob Eason too, so he's got another quarterback to start in there if he needs to. Until Wentz comes back. So I think I'm surprised he took Wentz over Newton there, just worried that maybe Gilds or Geller would take him because he needed a starter week 1. So to kind of, I would have flip-flopped those picks, but yeah, it ended up working out for him. My thing is, like, I just wish he would have taken different players. Like, the build isn't as horrible now to me, but he's not going to be good at tight end compared to some other teams. He passed on some really good receivers for Miles Sanders and Chase Edmonds, I think. So to me, I still don't love the build, but he's going to need a lot more help at quarterback too.
I think Jared Goff too at QB 30 might have been the pick because he's the guy who's going to be starting at quarterback for his team. You don't have to worry about the injury. You don't have to worry about a rookie stepping in for him. So, I mean, when you get to the point where you're like, that guy should have taken Jared Goff, then it's a unique build, and we're going to have to see what happens with it.
Yeah, Jared Goff is a guy you never want to take in best ball, but I mean, he's actually a solid pick because he's going to start all 17 games, assuming he's healthy. And any quarterback that starts all 17 games is likely to give you 3 or 4 top 12 weeks. So Goff's a nice pick there. Anthony's team, I'm just curious to see how it works out. I wouldn't build a team like that, but I'm curious to see how it plays out. At least Wentz and Newton are at least a good pair because I do think Newton will be under center early in the season while Wentz is out. And then hopefully, by the time, Newton maybe hits the bench for Mac Jones, Wentz is back. So at least he should have one starting quarterback for the entire season. And then, you got to hope the rest of your roster kind of fills in from there.
Lots of interesting stuff from this first night. Lots of teams that are going to be worth watching as we go forward. And this draft still has another 11 rounds to go. So we're going to recap all of it on the website. We will talk to some of our most intriguing drafters, I think, from each of the drafts. We still have streams left on 5 more nights. Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, Thursday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, same times next week, 8 o'clock Tuesday, 8 o'clock Wednesday, 9 o'clock Thursday. We're going to go ahead and end it for tonight, though. You can find all of this. You can find all the information. You can find all our rankings, of course, on draftsharks.com. You can find all of us on Twitter. You can find all of the drafters from here on Twitter that we've linked to most of them from the Draft Sharks timeline. So be sure to check out any of those guys that you might be unfamiliar with and all the drafters yet to come. It should be an exciting event just like last year. We're honored to have all these folks drafting with us. Looking forward to the action that lies ahead. For Jared Smola, Adam Krautwurst, the entire Draft Sharks crew, thanks very much for joining us for night 1 of the Draft Sharks Invitational. And thanks so much for swimming with us.